Welcome back to Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. The next general election is almost upon us, and as you can expect, it's the season of political promises. Heaven and earth are on offer as the politicians try to lure us into voting for them. But what decides election outcomes in Kenya? In 2002, it was change. In 2007, it was violence. In 2013, it was the International Criminal Court. So that's the subject of today's conversation with our guest today, columnist Macharia Gaido and development activist Joseph Kwaka of Community Aid International. And so, Joseph, you feel the need to defend your social vetting. During the break, you pointed out that we here on Cheche have used it as a basis for our interrogation of a governor.
You know, well, what you used was social audit. There are two different things.
Okay.
Social vetting is what takes place before elections take place, okay? Yeah. But social audit is examination of somebody's performance while they're already in the office. But I want to defend social vetting, and I want to say that, first of all, you don't expect social change. When there is any struggle for social change, the results cannot be expected to take place overnight. It is something that is grinding slowly. But when people themselves come out to say that so-and-so should not be elected to a public office because he's a thief, he's arrogant, he's not competent, he's this and that, I mean, it begins to expose these people. It begins to also demystify leadership. I mean, demystify the power that is surrounding these people. And when people,
what use is that exposure and demystification? What
use? Well, you see, when in the last election some people were told to be, were said to be arrogant. I remember one candidate who is a seasoned politician came out kneeling in front of the crowd every time he held a rally and saying, I hear you people say I'm arrogant. I will not be arrogant anymore. I will be humble to your satisfaction. I mean, so these things work, and if the power is in the people, so any process that involves people to come out and expose things and determine the direction of their lives, it works.
Does that convince you, Charles?
That's a very strong statement. The power is with the people, and I think at this point we should say one other thing that will determine this election results are if people realize the power that is with them. And then
but you challenged Joseph during the break.
Yes, I did. Yes, and my argument was, and he has actually confessed in his defense of the social vetting process, that change does not come overnight. And so if we look at 2017 elections, that's about 19 days, social vetting may not contribute to a large extent on how the results churn out. But like Macharia said earlier in the show, I think Kenyans need to realize that the power is with them. If we realize the power is with us, that is going to determine the outcome of these elections.
Okay, Macharia, before you respond to that, Kenyans take exception to being called foolish. Andrew in Mombasa, it's a nice talk, but when someone says Kenyans are foolish, I don't think it's productive. Otherwise, he should be given the right move instead of accusing. I have heard one of the members of the panel of Cheche saying Kenyans are foolish. It did not please me. He must apologize. Shadrach.
I have no apologies to make. I stand by that. If you vote for a person principally because he is from your tribe, you don't look at his policy platform, you don't look at his competence, his qualifications, his ethical and moral standing, his ideological platform, you are foolish. And if 90% of Kenyans are going to vote on the basis of tribe, we are all foolish. Simple as that.
But as I said before, people are changing. People are not going to vote just because of tribe.
Because you're trying to soften Macharia's
words. Because
and to help him escape the wrath of the public.
There are a lot of people, including in Central Province, who are going to vote for NASA. They are not foolish. They are deciding to vote for NASA because they are frustrated by Jubilee.
This is the point. This is the point where you introduce the old saying: "Only fools don't change."
Yeah, and people are changing. Young people are coming up, like you said, middle class people who, like you said before, when there is no unga, there's no unga even in Gatundu. There's not unga even in Bondo. So people are realizing that Jubilee has made mistakes, or Raila is not good. So there are certain people in Nyanza, and I've seen a lot of people in Nyanza, from low people, who are totally against Raila because of certain reasons. So Kenyans, as you say, they are not very foolish. We have a lot of Kenyans who are clever.
May I say something about
I didn't say 100% foolish.
I said
90%.
I think Macharia is just saying it as it is, but some of us would say we are still third world and we think that way. Because when you look at even the educated, the intellectuals, the so-called intellectuals, the Wasomi, they will also vote, a lot of them will vote on the basis of ethnicity. And so even those who are educated can be said to be foolish, can be said to be backward politically.
And when somebody argues that this is hata kama ni mwizi wetu, what do you call that kind of person? Like Joseph says, Macharia just saying it like it is. Maybe some of us are coward, we can't say it like it is.
But you also had a point to make about the Unga example,
which Mutegi has referred to. It's very sad that when there was food crisis, Unga crisis, it cut across the whole country.
Yes, we're still in Unga crisis, aren't we?
The CS for Agriculture, Willie Bet, told people that it's only up to end of this month, so we are waiting to see. Nonetheless, when we had that crisis, when it was really biting, it was biting across the whole country, from Vanga all the way to Ajia, from Turkana all the way to Malaba and everywhere. But then you still get wowed when somebody says, this is our man, this is our person. Nyinyi ndio muone unga iko.
I want to say this about, something, although it is Unga talk right now, and I saw a headline, Mr. Diambo, that said in a newspaper that there will be Unga after elections. I wonder why there was, why there should be Unga, not Unga now, but it will be there after elections. They will be back in the shelves after elections. But let me go back a little bit, Urwak, to social vetting. Social vetting is also providing politicians with a platform to clear their names where their opponents are peddling rumors and falsehoods about them. Because when that report is compiled and being presented to the public, as it will happen on 20th in Kwale and 21st in Taita Taveta and others after that, we are appealing to politicians, those who are adversely mentioned, to come forth, like Professor Kivuta Kibwana did in the last election, when as an MP he had been accused of embezzling CDF money. He came with dossiers, evidence in front of the public in a big rally, and it was cleared and people clapped for him. I think those were one of the contributors of him being elected governor of Makueni. And after he had been elected, he invited us to an organization to continue doing social audit on him so that he could get feedback from the public. And I think if we had to rank, and some of us have been ranking some of these governors, one of the most transparent and people empowering governors in this country is Professor Kivuta Kibwana on that score. Yeah. And you remember you also used one of our social audit reports to pin down one of the governors in this country. When in Cheche, in this program.
That was Governor Cornel Rasango.
Yes, you used our report. So these things work. There were very, very bad issues that came out of that report. But I hope Governor Rasanga took the opportunity to...
But you made the point that he's a candidate.
He's actually one of the front runners in the Siaya gubernatorial race. Him and Nicholas Gumbo are going head to head.
Well, that does not mean that, we are still yet to see the impact of that, Mr. Odhiambo, because he is head to head with Gumbo, and we never know. Maybe the things that were unearthed during the social audits in his term might just work against him.
Can candidates afford to ignore you?
Can?
Candidates afford to ignore you? To
ignore your audit.
At their own peril.
At their own peril.
At their own peril. Because the saying goes, if you are silent about something said about you, what you're telling the public is that it is true. It can be taken for truth. So it is upon them to come and defend themselves when there are allegations against them. And in fact, they can take the opportunity. When we were in Homer Bay on 10th last Monday, Oyugi Magwanga, who is really is seen to be a strong candidate against Governor Awiti, Cyprian Awiti, took advantage and brought a battalion of good, smart young people to defend him on issues, and they took the platform and really, really promoted their campaign. on that platform. So it is not just negative, it is also positive.
Because you've used the word peril, I'll ask this question, because we're in the season of political promises. But we seem as a country to oscillate between promise and peril around elections. So which will it be for 2017?
Despite all my misgivings, I prefer to be an optimist. I am just hoping that...
What gives you grounds for optimism?
Maybe just foolish hope.
Foolish hope. So you're just as foolish as the others.
I have not said I'm clever.
Okay.
I prefer to be an optimist. And I do hope that we can keep our heads together and go through a peaceful election. But as I've always said, peace does not come out of the blue. It comes out of a free, fair,
justice,
transparent, and credible election. So all these campaigns for peace and prayers for peace and everything else for peace, to me, is a lot of nonsense. Let us focus on the electoral system, and that will guarantee the peace.
The campaign should be for credible elections.
I haven't heard in this group anybody talking about money. I've seen some fellows in
corruption and poverty.
I've talked about money factor, and that it will unfortunately make some people get elected because they have a lot of money.
That's a major determinant.
I've seen somebody in Cheche walking. Some candidate for Cheche, they walk. I've seen somebody in a wheelbarrow. And I've seen people, we have seen other people who are choppering all over, they're in choppers all over. Money is not money, serious.
Of course, money matters. Money is big in Kenyan elections. And but as we saw, the political classes conspired to knock out the election finance laws.
Yeah.
But we've also seen isolated situations where somebody with a lot of money was kicked out by 190. Although in these elections, 19 days away, money is going to be a major determinant.
To me, one of the reasons why we are getting poor leadership is because our elections are determined by money. And it should not be at all, because we have some of the most expensive elections in the world, where even in counties people use choppers. And for a good person who does not have money, they don't stand a chance to get elected. Well, they do in some places, but those are isolated cases. So the next frontier to me in fighting for good democracy, good leadership, good governance is to reduce, to look at the election financing.
There's one other factor that we have not mentioned, which has just come in my mind: the fear for the unknown. It's a narrative that is being formed, and which I think to some extent will contribute a lot to the outcome of elections. The fear that there is going to be violence, and so you should keep peace, and so somebody moves away from where they registered as voters, and that vote is not going to be cast. I think to an extent,
actually you've heard in campaign rallies people saying make sure you vote, but I'm sure that when you know along corridors you hear people saying that they'll vote and immediately go up country or go out of the country or do something or the other, or we're checking supermarkets to ensure that we're stocked up just in case.
So fear is going to be a determinant too in this election. Fear for the unknown to some extent.
Well, probably to some extent. But from our experience, when you talk about political violence, it does not happen before.
On the day of voting?
Or on the day of the polling.
It's after.
It happens a few days later on the results.
Although in some regions,
there will always be
some regions, we have seen violence taking place, like what's happening in Lamu.
Take the case of what happened in Mombasa, in the last election.
There are certain areas where people are being harassed so that they move away. So that they don't vote.
Influence the outcome of the
influence the voting. So that is
that can happen. That can happen.
And you can't rule out the deployment of security forces in what is perceived as hotspots, because when you take a big contingent of GSU around a polling center, I mean, definitely there are a number of people who will not turn up and vote for fear of the red berets.
To me, I mean, I want to be optimistic, because I mean, I think these elections will come. We'll go to the polls, we'll cast our votes, and perhaps we'll just go back home peaceful, and the results will be announced and nothing will happen. I don't understand why people can't see how, if Raila can go and campaign in Kiambu very peacefully and come out, if Uhuru can go to Kisumu, I know there was little heckling, but not to Uhuru directly. Uhuru wasn't heckled, I can say that. And that means that we are also maturing as a democracy, I think.
That's the point I was making.
Yeah. And I'd like to ask, how much of a factor is that in this election? The fact that, you know, this is a devolved system of government, new constitution, and that voters seem to be more confident in exercising their sovereignty, in expressing themselves.
You see, unlike before, during Kanu times, or during when multi-party came, there used to be zones. Certain politicians could not go to certain areas. There are some people with that kind of attitude, like the Indians who are in Thika, who are throwing stones and doing that is now over. Of course, some of these things are sponsored. Local politicians mobilize people to throw stones. This is not very spontaneous. But we have moved, we've come from far, where you'll never see. I remember one day that Matipa could not go beyond the Rupin Guards, go to Embu, to go to campaign in those areas. The government or whoever blocked them. These days there are no blockage. There are those sponsored little things that happen in certain areas, where, you know, those areas with certain control of certain politicians. That is moving out. I don't think
so social media would suggest otherwise, but when the 2013 we had the ICC, international observers say, as a restraining influence. People were afraid that they would be sent to the ICC. We don't have that anymore. So even though, Mutegi, you're making the case that the country seems to be opening up to alternative and political influences, it does seem as if the incitement, the restraints that we saw in 2013 has been let loose.
What we don't have in this country is good manners, hygiene, what somebody is calling
political hygiene.
Political hygiene. So that you go to a political meeting and instead of discussing issues, you insult one another, and both of them are doing the same. Which is hygiene.
But when you speak to politicians away from all of that, they will tell you that when they speak like normal human beings in civilized and sober fashion, the people do not want to hear that. They want to hear them hurling insults at each other.
And so why would anybody be hard on Macharia Gaido when he uses the word FOOL?
Because Macharia Gaido should they think Macharia Gaido should speak better. Because, you know, people box us, you know, people categorize us. They know Macharia Gaido is not a politician, so he should have a clean mouth. The politicians are allowed to do that.
I speak my mind. I wish our politicians would really show leadership in some of these things. Unfortunately,
they play
a big role in what you call zoning
and socialization.
Zoning the country into strongholds. And if you look at the Uhuru campaigns today and the Raila campaigns today, they have focused on their strongholds, which is not what happens in other countries. In other countries, your stronghold is already secure, so you'll go to look for the vote in the areas where you don't have a vote.
But incidentally, Macharia, it is us in the media who
so I'm saying this. I wish. Raila has made some visits to Meru and some token visits to Kiambu and so on and so forth. Uhuru has made his token visit to Kisumu and I think Kakamega and some of those places. But they have not done far much in that direction. Because if you look at a close election where every single vote counts, it would have made a great deal of sense for Raila to take a very strong campaign to central Kenya. Even if he only picks up 200 votes in each constituency, that could make the difference. It could have made much sense for Uhuru to take a very strong campaign to Nyanza, even if he just picks up 200 extra votes in each constituency. That could be the difference. But he has spent most of his time in Kirinyaga, Muranga, Kiambu, areas where he already has a vote. Same for Raila.
But that encroachment, that fear,
there should not be that fear.
He wants to secure where he has, because of that infiltration.
It is already secure.
No, it is not.
But by your opponent coming into your stronghold, the perceived stronghold, you need to secure it. You need to make sure you damage.
But probably what you secure will be less than what you could win by venturing out to places you have not been.
Okay.
But gentlemen, lady, I think we need to go back to that issue of politicians spewing up vitriols and invectives in public. And that is a bad example to the country. I mean, these are people who should also play role model. And if they continue just, mounting political platforms and throwing out insults and such words, I think it's not, we are coming up with a bad political culture of insulting people all the time. And I think we need to send a strong message.
And I wonder,
some of us who are not in politics, we need to send a strong message.
Is it because
that is not acceptable?
Is it because they lack issues to present, or is it because this is what the public wants to consume?
Some of the greatest minds in political arena in history, people like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and so on, were never known to insult. Were never known. If somebody wants to be a great politician and leave a legacy, they should talk clean and just sell their policies.
Charles, you asked a question which I already addressed, which is that politicians will tell you that the public wants to hear them, being insulting of each other, that when they speak in a sober, civilized manner, it does nothing for them. And so the point, Joseph, that we take from what you're saying is that the politicians can say that going forward, they will socialize the public not to expect that sort of language from them. But here's what our viewers are saying before we take a break. They're really not happy with you, Macharia. They're still
I'm used to that.
Very upset. But there is one person who says, Mr. Gaidho, speak loudly. Tell them, yes, 80, although you said 90% of Kenyan voters are foolish. Kenyans who deny facts, touching on their tribesmen. Gaidho, you are courageous. We need 4 more of you. And then for you, social vetting brought down the Kabogo governor in Kiambu. Mutegi people are upset with you as well. Raila's community is hostile, and unlike the Ameru, none of them can vote for any other candidate but Raila. And then Mutegi, please don't speak of Marians concerning our stand in politics. We are Jubilee in Kirote. We are, though someone else, who Mutegi at his age should be advising the youth, not taking sides or letting us know Wameru are voting for NASA. Is he campaigning for them? What is Raila to do for us that he hasn't done in the many years he's been in the government? Uhuru has implemented most projects to show his capability. So that's for you, Mutegi. And then more social vetting. It's a sure way of weeding out some undesirable elements from creeping into the ranks of leadership. That's Christine. I'm a panelist in Busia. We're to have our public rally and social vetting on the 27th. I'm enjoying the program. Yes, that's what our listeners are saying. But Macharia, you're drawing a light on
what I said is that Raila has made inroads in
Meru.
Not necessarily in Meru, in areas that he couldn't get. You see.
And I think Mutegi was very clear. He also said Uhuru has made inroads in Kisii and
in Nyanza.
Okay, so we'll take a break now.
And it's not true that Raila's backyard cannot vote anybody else. They voted overwhelmingly for Mwai Kibaki in 2002, didn't they?
Thank you for that correction for our viewers. So we'll take a break now. This is Cheche on Citizen TV. We'd love to hear what you think will be the deciding factor in next month's general election. Our SMS number is 22422, or you can tweet us using the hashtag Cheche.